This is Boxing Tickets NI, and we're joined with John Cooney. How are you, John?
Not so bad, thanks. Not so bad. Keeping
You're
well
on
through
obviously.
everything.
You're on obviously. You only fought last weekend there, so you're sort of in a bit of a chill time now between fights.
Well, I had a couple of days to ease back off of it, but it's back probably doing a little bit of light stuff now. Get back into it. Keep ticking over now. Keep
Definitely,
ticking
there hasn't
over.
been obviously a lot of boxers that's been able to get fights, with the pandemic and everything else. But I guess obviously it's testament to Stephen O'Rourke and Conor Slater for getting you out and getting you active.
Yes, yes, they're doing a great job with all their fighters, keeping everyone busy. The gym's busy in general. I think last year was the busiest gym in Ireland, with all the fighters getting out quite regularly for a pandemic. It's obviously hard times for even fighters who are signed with bigger promotional deals and stuff. It's even hard for some of them to get out regularly. Just with the way things are and up and down, shows being cancelled and pulled, and fighters being cancelled and pulled because of COVID and stuff. So yeah, it's good to keep busy. Good to keep busy.
Definitely, and obviously, you sort of making your debut, during the pandemic and things like that. You sort of really haven't got the experience some of the big card buzzes, so to speak. Yet, it's all sort of
Yeah,
hush hush behind closed doors, sort of, and you're going,
yeah,
just want a crowd in the corner to shout my name.
yeah, yeah. It just feels that you're constantly in the gym, sort of thing. It's when you're fighting. Sometimes it just kind of feels like a bit of a spar in the sense that it's just quiet. There's not too much noise. You can hear every punch sinking in and stuff. But it's okay. Like obviously I'm looking forward to fans getting back and a bit more atmosphere. Even for watching it. It's not quite the same without the fans, but you still have a job to do and stuff. So at the end of the day, you still get in the ring. It's only two people, so you do what you have to do.
Yep, exactly. It gets you in and
Mm.
gets the fundamentals sort of going. So I'd sort of said the off air. Obviously, whenever you sort of turn pro and things like that, I wouldn't probably be the most knowledgeable of people and things from amateur wise in terms of boxing.
Yeah.
So sort of rolling back a bit, what age did you start boxing, John?
First got into boxing when I was around 11 or 12. I was growing up in London, and I mainly played soccer. That was kind of, and I was just kind of, I wanted to get into it. London was a little bit rough growing up. You'd kind of find yourself in one or two predicaments as a young lad, sort of thing, scrapping or whatever. And yeah, just kind of got into I think first gym I ever went to probably around 11 or 12,
Hmm.
something around that. And that's it. I didn't really take it serious for a year or two. Kind of didn't, most boxers, you speak to them and they say as soon as they walk in the gym, they fall in love. And
Yeah.
it kind of took me about a year and a half to really, really love it and get hooked on it.
And what sort of got you into the sport then? I always find this, you can probably have a wide range of things sometimes. I can remember obviously starting karate as a youngster, but it was more my mum sent me for self-defense. Was there anything that
Yeah,
got you
yeah.
involved? Was it other friends or family?
Well, no, not such. I was one of these young lads who would always find himself in trouble as a kid in school
Mhm.
and fighting, and no matter what sports I did. I actually, funny you mentioned karate there. I actually remember I was asking my parents to go to a boxing gym and stuff, and they wouldn't let me go because I think they thought it'd make me worse in school if I knew how to fight and
Yeah.
whatever else. So they sent me to karate, and I remember I went to karate for a little while. As you say, it's more self defense and stuff. I just didn't like it because I couldn't hit anyone. I remember I
Hmm.
went down there and started hitting kids, and they were giving out to me and stuff. So yeah, it just it wasn't for me. So it took a little bit of convincing, but I finally convinced them into letting me do the boxing eventually.
And 'cause
Yeah,
also, so when you sort of look at the karate sort of thing, I think I probably got into it more of it's probably around the age of Karate Kid, the original sort of ones and stuff like that. And
okay, yeah,
it was I didn't stick at it either. It was boring.
yeah,
It was all you were all like a
yeah,
robot. It was all straight hands and things like that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It was, and the fact you couldn't actually hit anyone, you were kind of hitting, but not actually hitting anyone. For me, that felt like it was like. I know it was like saying, yeah, you do a 100-meter sprint, but you're only allowed to sprint 80 meters or something. It
yeah.
just didn't make sense to me. Yeah, it's funny you say about the Karate Kid. I think one of the main things that probably got me into boxing was Rocky films, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Used to love watching the Rocky films with my dad. That inspire anyone, you know, watching the old Rocky films. They're great films.
They
Great
definitely
films.
were, and you always think, probably anybody that's in the boxing will have watched the Rocky films in some way, but
100%.
it's
Yeah,
not just
100%.
boxing. There's a motivational things in it. Like, how many times
For sure.
have they used some of the motivational things in boxing, and it's probably right in some ways that you need to
Yeah,
have that motivating factor behind you, or what's the
you
sense?
do. You do, because boxing's a tough sport, you know, in every sense of the word. It's tough in the ring, it's tough outside the ring, to do with the training, not just the training, just everyday life obstacles that come with boxing or to do with boxing. So it's a tough sport. So you do need that motivational side to pick you up when you're not feeling it. When you don't want to do something or something's going against you. That motivational factor definitely helps.
It definitely does help a big
Mhm.
way. And do you sort of, getting into boxing and things like that, who would you try to craft your style and stuff on growing up?
Style wise, I think it was always Manny Pacquiao, because I'm a southpaw as well. It
Mm-hmm.
was always kind of like, obviously I was light, especially obviously when I was younger. I was kind of, I think my first fight was at 52 kilos. So I was only a light little fellow. So it was kind of my first coach, Adrian Malloy was his name. He was a friend of the family's. He was the one that really kind of got me hooked into the boxing and, got me actually fighting and so on. And yeah, he was always kind of trying to drill it into me, that Pacquiao, that speed, that sort of in, out kind of, that box puncher sort of quite ferocious, and
Mm-hmm.
didn't let up. So that was kind of, style-wise, that was kind of what I tried to be. But obviously, trying to be like Manny Pacquiao it's a hard feat. Like, when you're a young kid, he's, unbelievable fighter, still is to this day. But there was many fighters, for me, boxing has always been watching boxing is always about excitement. It's always been about, for me, the fights I'd love to watch most were the ones where they would stand there going toe to toe. The
Mm-hmm.
Barreras, the all them boys. The Barreras, Pacquiao fights, and all them sort of lads. And another one that I used to like, kind of coming up, was Carl Froch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wouldn't be overly gone on him as a person, but his style and the way he was always game, and he came to fight and he'd drag you through the trenches and he'd make fights exciting. That was the sort of stuff I enjoyed watching. The Gatty, the Wards, them sort of fights. They're classics.
And probably
So
one of the fights that probably sticks out the most with Carl Froch is probably, was it the Jermaine Taylor fight, where he pretty much,
yes,
he was
yeah,
behind in the cards last round,
just
with 10 seconds to
yeah.
go, whack, that was it.
He got his head boxed off really, and then just like you say there, I think it was last 10 seconds or even 5 seconds or something. Yeah, he just caught him and laid him out. And your man Taylor just couldn't get up. Yeah, he even he was very tough, wasn't he? He was just
Mm-hmm.
very durable. He was a hard man to beat over 12 rounds, over
He
12. I
was.
mean, you look at the Groves fight. It's funny now. I actually prefer Groves than I do Frotch.
Mm-hmm.
As time goes on. But I remember at the time I got a load of friends around to watch the first fight, and I was mad for Carl Frotch to win. I didn't like Groves at the time, because he had that kind of cocky exterior or whatever.
Yeah.
And even then, I thought he had him beat. Like, I thought he had him stopped, and he still managed to come back somehow, and get the stoppage. Although it could have been maybe a small bit early, but that was, I think he would have went on to stop him anyway. So, but there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Great.
probably it's
Some great
important
players.
sometimes to sort of have role models in the sport, because you sort of have to
Definitely.
craft yourself in somebody and think, I want to be like him when I grow up, or I want to be, I
Yeah,
want to do this,
definitely. I
because
think. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think it's traits. For me, it's traits. What traits they have. Like, you have to respect the likes of Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, for how long they were at the top. To even get to the top, we know is not easy, but to stay at the top for that long shows the dedication that they've had throughout their lives to the sport.
yeah,
That's not something you can do just willy-nilly and just kind of go to the gym twice a week and be like that. That takes years and years and years of dedication and craft, honing their craft and just, being fully focused on one thing.
Yep, exactly. So talk me through, obviously, your amateur career then. Obviously, your amateur career was all mostly in England, so probably for a lot of Irish
Yes.
fight fans, they wouldn't know much about your amateur career. How long were you what was your sort of record as an amateur? And
My amateur career is a little bit of a different one to most. I actually didn't have many fights. I was in the boxing gym, like I say, from about 11, 12 years old, but I didn't actually have my first fight until I was 14. And I ended up having 20, I think it was about 20 or 21 amateur fights, but
Mhm.
90% of them fights were in elite championships.
Mhm.
I started boxing in a club in London, and I moved down south, and that's where I joined up with my first amateur coach, Adrian Malloy, where I boxed out of Southampton in a
Mhm.
boxing gym called Golden Ring, where
Mhm.
there are plenty of great fighters at the time. They were one of the best gyms in the south coast of England. And after I think it was 4 or 5 fights, I was put in county championships. So like, Dublin, no, Connacht, and all the
The
Connacht.
county
We say
boxing
like it
and
would have
stuff
been,
here.
yeah, it would have been like a county version. And I remember I went into that and I got a bye right straight through to the final. And yeah, won that because the lad I was supposed to fight had already fought and I beat him, so he pulled out.
Mhm.
And then after that, they said the coaches were telling me they were struggling. I don't, it's hard to know yourself, but they were telling me they were struggling to get me fights. So they said, if you want to fight, you have to fight in the championships, which would have
Mhm.
been over here junior. We say elite championships, so all the top boxers would have been going into it. So I was like, yeah, okay. Well, I wanted to fight, so they flung me in kind of at the deep end, and it worked out well. In the first championships, I got to the semi-finals in only my 10th fight. I think it was my 10th fight. And I was boxing, national champions. I beat a Welsh champion on the way. I think in the quarterfinals, I beat the Welsh champion quite convincingly as well. I
Mhm.
think every fight I had, I was an underdog, not expected to win because I had half as many fights as everyone I was fighting. And I ended up winning. And I got to the semi-finals where I would have boxed a kid from quite a famous club. You've probably heard of it,
Yeah.
Repton, London. They're a very famous club. And yeah, I had a good fight with him. He was national champion 2, 3 times, boxed for England. I think he had 45, 50 fights at the time. So, it was looking like a bit of a mismatch on paper.
Mhm.
But I done fairly well. And then the same thing happened then after that. Unfortunately for me, then after that, I boxed against some of the best kids in the country, done very well. But I'd only had 11 fights. And then no one really wanted to fight me with 10, 11 fights. So I kind of had to go back in the championships again. So yeah, most of my fights, I think I did in the end, I did 4 national championships in England. I got to 2 quarterfinals, 2 semi-finals. I think there was only 1 year that I didn't lose to the eventual winner.
Mhm.
So yeah, most of my although I only had 20 fights, I kind of had a lot more experience than your average person who would have had 20 amateur fights. Because most people would have kind of done the novices or the, I
Yeah,
don't know
building
what
up
you
sort
call
of, did
me.
they?
Yeah. Do you know? Whereas I was unfortunate. Well, not unfortunately. I enjoyed it. It was good for me. I was just flung in the deep end, to be honest. And
And,
it
and
worked
let's
out
face it,
well.
in boxing, it's sort of as a saying, you can't go swimming and not get wet. At least it's sort
Yeah,
of,
exactly.
people's had a great amateur career and probably not performed the same as a pro. So sometimes the better conditioned you are as an amateur, it leads you into
Two
obviously
different.
what you're going to do as a pro as well. So
Yeah, and they're two
probably in the
different.
the limited fights you've had, you probably learned more from the bigger level fights that
Yeah.
obviously will then suit you coming into the pro ranks.
Yeah, the thing is as well is they're two different sports in a sense, nearly.
Mm-hmm.
Amateur and pro, they are just two worlds apart. And I always, like I say, I was boxing at 60 kilos when I was 16 years old in national championships. So I
Mm-hmm.
was boxing kids who were naturally bigger than me. I was always a little bit not overweight, but I was always heavy, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was boxing these, long, tall range kids who were very good amateur boxers. But I had that more pro style kind of get in and, have a bit more of a tear up sort of thing. So for me, it was always, I knew I was always going to do better when I went pro and stuff. So I kind of always lost out to them top elite amateurs, the boys who you would see on the circuit in the Europeans and them sort of competitions, they were the kids who beat me, you know, and they were really the only kids who would. But yeah, it's a different sports. The things I learned in my time as an amateur, I learned enough, you know. I learned enough, and I was happy with what I had turning over, you know.
Yep, exactly, and obviously it's led on to you well. So when did you move? Obviously, when did you move? Obviously, to Ireland then, because obviously you spent most of your life in England, and your parents are both Irish. So when did you move? Pretty much for them back home, but for a new country for you.
Yeah. So I give up the boxing at 18 for a little while. Got a little bit, you know, kind of wanted to go out and be young and have fun. So I actually went off to Spain for 6-7 months to live in Spain for a while. And when I came back, the parents had decided that I want to move back to Ireland. My dad wanted to retire, kind of work less, and you know, just take it a little bit handier and be closer to home, as they say. And at the time, I was I didn't, you know, I wasn't boxing. I didn't have anything set in stone. So I just said I'd go back and try it out as well. And we moved back to Galway on the West Coast. I think I was 19 at the time when we actually did end up moving, which is probably about five odd years ago now. About 5, maybe even coming up to 6 later this year. And yeah, just moved back with them to the West Coast and said I'd give it a try. And yeah, it went for about a year and a half, and then I wanted to get back into the boxing, so I said to myself I'd go back to England, and because I knew the scene, I knew the coach, you know, that sort of way.
Yeah.
So I said I'd go back and then I'd go pro, and I did that for close to a year, and then I got injured. I had a bad shoulder injury, so I couldn't work, couldn't do anything, so I had to move home again, and I just ended up staying. This time I settled that little bit better, and just kind of wanted to stay now, and I don't think I can move again now.
Yeah, but obviously
But
once you find your feet and find your home, that's it then.
that's it. Yeah.
So how did the move? How did it come about that you turned pro? I believe you obviously been training out of Stephen O'Rourke's gym for a while to sort of prepare yourself and.
Yeah. So it come about. I actually come about off the back of the pandemic. To be honest, you know, it was it's a bit of a bizarre one because, you know, obviously the pandemic has worked for people in different ways. Some very bad, some good. You know, some fighters haven't even fought, you know, for 15 odd months, 16 months. They've been out a long time. And I was back in the amateur scene. I was training in a club in Galway called Monavea. I was getting ready for amateur fights. I was back in the gym November 2019, I think it was. And I was gearing up for a fight around March, April in the amateurs. I thought I'd get back into the amateur scene and then go pro. It was, for me, it was always looking to go pro eventually, you know, that was always the goal. And the pandemic hit in March, everything closed down. And I just taken on a strength and conditioning coach who looks after all my training, the athlete clinic in Galway, Jonathan Gibson. He's great. So I joined up with him, and we just said that we'd stay training over the lockdown, you know. We just said we'd stay ahead of the game because we didn't know how long it was going to last. We didn't know if the fights were going to be back in the summer, and you just didn't know. So I had nothing else to do. I had, you know, as we all didn't have anything to do. And I just said to myself I'd stay dedicated because I'd used that time that everyone else was probably slacking and doing nothing to gain the ground back that I had lost from a couple of years injury and stuff. So yeah, I just kept training. I think it came about June, July time. I was, you know, obviously very fit at this stage. I was training hard. I was even dieting good. And I seen Stephen O'Rourke's gym. You know, the boys were putting up some stuff. They were starting to train again outside and this, that, and the other. And I was mad for sparring. You know, I was training. I was running every day. I was shadow boxing, hitting the bag. You know, not every boxer you tell you that eventually gets boring. You want to hit someone, you know, so and get hit. So yeah, I messaged Stephen. I just said, you know, could I come down for sparring? I said I'm a competent boxer. Blah blah blah. Just said, you know, would you be up for that? And he asked me a little bit about my background. You know, could I box? How I box? What did I do? So on and so forth. And then I went up for a day, and I ended up sparring with a few of the lads. And I think he was fairly impressed. He asked me to come back then, you know, to do some more sparring. It just kind of went like that. We didn't really talk about, you know, me boxing for him or anything. I just I just kept coming down for the training, and yeah, we would. Ended up being there for a good few weeks, just consistently. I was going down every day training, and then we started. He started saying to me, "Oh, would you like to go pro?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. That's always been the goal, sort of thing." And
Yeah.
yeah, it just kind of gradually grew from there. Then I started, I met up with Conor Slater, and we all kind of sat down and had a bit of a talk, and so on and so forth. And it's just kind of gone from there now. Now I'm up here full time. So
Sort of
yeah,
as a lot of people put it, sometimes it's probably destiny. That fate meant that
yeah,
obviously with the pandemic going on, with you keeping your hard work going, the doors open for you. And everybody's a different
100%.
story, and obviously how they've got the professional boxing. But you can always say that during the pandemic, it was probably great times for me, because if it didn't happen, you probably wouldn't be where you are
No.
now.
Well, exactly. I've said this to a few people. I don't know if I'd even be a professional boxer now if the pandemic never happened. I would have been back in the amateurs, but how long I would have stayed in the amateurs, how long, might not have got the connections I got now. It all works in strange ways, But one thing I said to myself when the pandemic did happen is I said I'd just keep training. I had nothing else to do. I couldn't go anywhere. It's not like I was missing out on anything.
Yeah.
So I just said to myself that I would stay dedicated and that it would hopefully pay off. And it did in a bigger way than I could imagine, And with a great team with Stephen O'Rourke and Conor Slater, as we said earlier, that, he's keeping his fighters very, very busy. And I think, that speaks volumes on the type of manager Conor is
Mm-hmm.
and the coach that Stephen is, the fact that everyone is struggling, no matter how big the box or how big the cards, like the Matchroom cards, the Frank Warren cards, they're all struggling, in different ways because of this thing that's uncontrollable, really,
Yeah.
and he's keeping us busy, and we're getting our trade in, and at a time where people aren't fighting as regularly, we are fighting regularly, so we're kind of taking leapfrogs above some people. Some people could be, we say, 4-0, 5-0, but it took them 3 years to get there, whereas some of us are already nearly there, and it's been in a year of a pandemic. So it's brilliant. It speaks volumes on their characters, and their jobs.
And I know from speaking to Stephen, obviously, and social media and things like that, they're not just making fights for the sake of it, and not just
No.
giving you easy journeymen that are sort of there to do a job, but sort of progressing at the same time. So, yes, it's understandable sometimes, probably for yourself, John, because you probably wouldn't have been as active as some others, that you might need a few fights to get going, but their
Oh,
emphasis isn't
100%.
just, they just don't want to build fighters with a 10-0 record fighting nobody's.
No, because look, at the end of the day, I mean, we've actually seen it a lot recently, of very good amateur fighters, stepping up a level and, getting beat because, they may have had one, like Josh Kelly was a good example of Avanesian there the weekend. Josh Kelly's looked great in some of his fights. He's got all the skills
Mm-hmm.
that any boxer could ever wish for, but at the same time, maybe he took a step too far too quick and he didn't have the right tests. And, Stephen's been in the game a long time. Conor's a clever manager. You need, like I've only had 2 fights now, and the 2 lads I've fought have been they've been tough as nails. All right, they're not world-class boxers, but
Mm-hmm.
they're giving you the rounds and they're giving you things to think about. And
Yeah.
that's what you need, no matter who you're fighting or what you're doing. You need to be asked questions, because when you step up, we say, for a title fight in a year's time, or whenever it is, or a big fight without a title, whatever it is, when you're in a real 50-50 fight, if you've been asked them questions and the person you're fighting that hasn't, you can bet that you're going to be that bit more confident on
Mm-hmm.
answering them if they're asked of you in that fight. So it
And
definitely.
particularly with you starting out, I guess, as well, it's important that obviously that you're getting rounds in. If you have a hardened journeyman, so to speak, to fight, you're hitting him a punch and he's staying up. It's probably more beneficial for you to get the rounds now, rather than blowing somebody away in 30 seconds and going, what was the sense in training for 6 weeks for this fight? And
Yeah,
he just
yeah.
lies down.
The thing is with that, you can blow a fella over in one round, but you're not seeing your mistakes then,
Mm-hmm.
Like I've watched back my first fight, my second fight, so I'm seeing so many mistakes The problem is, if I didn't do the 4 rounds and I just did, 1 round and blew them out there, I wouldn't have made them mistakes to
Yeah.
correct in the gym. And, that's essentially what it's about, because, them mistakes are the ones that are going to get you beat if you don't correct them in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to progress every fight, but to progress every fight, you can't be perfect every fight, and that's where having tough tests along the way, stepping it up, that's where the clever managing comes in, and the clever coaching, knowing the right fights at the right time and stepping up rightly. And that's, if you look at any of the top fighters these days, any of the world champions, 9 times out of 10, they were stepped up correctly.
Mm-hmm.
They were stepped up, bit by bit, asked certain questions at certain times of their, careers, and it's worked out for them. Whereas you've seen before when fighters have either just been rushed too quick, or, like, again, Kelly, the weekend, I feel like it was, he didn't even fight for a British title. Really, he probably should have, competed at the domestic level that bit more, proved,
Yeah.
like they used. I think nowadays they seem to want to, pad people's records that bit more and maybe skip a level. I think
Mm-hmm.
we've seen as well with Anthony Yard, never fought for a British title, fought for a world title, got beat. He did do very well though, but had he maybe had them tougher domestic fights, them, really proved himself going up, he could have beat Kovalev, because Kovalev was there for the taking, as you've seen in his next fight, So
Totally agree there, and I say, I think I put a post up on Twitter about 2 months ago, maybe, and it was not that I was having a go at any boxers in particular, but sometimes people forget the domestic scene, Commonwealth, British, European, before you even think of looking at world titles,
yeah,
probably in some ways boxing's failing because there's so many different types of European belts you can win nowadays. It's probably more important
yeah.
than becoming
I
world ranked than winning a belt.
Yeah, I think half the problem with boxing is these days is boxers don't want to fight good boxers.
Mm.
They like no one wants. See, the pros, it's different in the amateurs. Amateurs, you take a loss, you're back next week.
Yeah.
Whereas the pros, there's this hysteria, like the Floyd Mayweather thing of being undefeated, and yeah, of course it looks better, and of course no one wants to be wants to be beat. But at the end of the day, if you don't take risks, I mean, you look back at the Durans and the Haglers and the Sugar Ray Robinsons and all the great fighters of the past. 9 times out of 10, I think pretty much all of them have lost, and lost quite a few times. Because they fought the best fighters, and when you fight the best fighters, it only takes a bad night for you to lose. But that's where you learn and come back and become a great fighter. And
Yeah.
I feel we're missing out on a lot of that nowadays, especially at domestic level.
Still there, yeah.
Yeah, still here, yeah.
I think I lost you. I think my screen just went completely delala there for a second, but I think it was still working in the background. But yeah, you're so right there to say. So sometimes you've so many fighters that are out there that's protecting records and anything else, and they don't want to take the big risks. At the end of the day, if you take a big risk for the British title, there's no bad feeling in losing and having to rebuild yourself sort of to
Well,
come again.
yeah, well, I think a great example of someone taking a risk and it being rewarded for it is Eric Donovan. He took that fight with Zelfa Barrett on the Matchroom show. He went a weight above, I think is his natural. I think he's a featherweight naturally. He took that risk, but he took that risk probably more because he knew he had to. Because if he wants to get anywhere, he's at a certain age where he. But see, a lot of fighters now they might be a bit younger now. Oh, I don't know if I want to take that risk just yet. Why do I need to take that just yet? But I think that's what we're missing. I think we're missing boxers taking risks.
Mm-hmm.
I think back in the day, fighters were more willing to take a risk and to lose and lick their wounds and come back. I think fighters today, maybe it's ego, maybe it's genuinely that they don't believe in themselves completely. I don't know what it is, but I do believe fighters do definitely need to take more risks and not try to worry so much about a padded record or not getting beat before you get to a certain level. Because, sometimes fighters lose at a domestic level and then they get written off,
Mm-hmm.
which, who was a brilliant example would have been Anthony Crolla.
Yeah.
He lost quite a few times at domestic level, quite a few times, I think. And, he come back and become a world champion, so...
Yeah,
speaks
exactly. It's proof
volumes.
that just because you lose domestic level doesn't mean to say you can't go away and rebuild yourself and come back.
100%, 100%.
So obviously you made your debut then in November in Alicante, and funnily
Yes.
you had your second fight in Alicante as well. So Spain's sort of
Yeah.
becoming a new home for you as well. You know,
Yeah, I
um,
actually lived out there as well for a year, so it definitely feels a bit like home.
you're used to the Spanish food then as well, I suppose. Not that you've been able to eat much
Yeah.
of it before fights, but you've been used to the
No.
Spanish food.
Unfortunately not. Yeah, making weight definitely isn't the funnest part of boxing, but no, it's been great. It's been great. I spent two occasions. Like, look, obviously, it's been behind closed doors. The setup has been very good, though. It has been a great setup, very professional. But it's not the same. Obviously, you want, you just look at, Irish fights. When there is fans, even in England, and I'm looking forward to getting fans back. And obviously, because no one's been able to watch me as a pro yet, and obviously I'm
Yeah,
changing as a fighter. It's a different game. I'm looking forward to fans, family and friends and fans being able to come back to the shows and really enjoy it, because that's what it's all about. It's all about entertainment.
exactly, and particularly obviously with the fights being on a pay-per-view platform, it's sort of hard to find. You're only really going to have your die-hard fans that are watching these shows, and it's hard to
Yeah,
then find a fan base from behind closed doors. So at least when you know you're back and there's fans at shows, you can start building more of a fan base because people can actually see
yeah.
you live.
Of course, yeah. Look, obviously, you're kind of being segregated in a way that only a small population. At the moment, I'm on cards, that are in Spain, so there's not as many Irish fighters on it, so there's not as many Irish eyes, and so on and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
like you say, with the pay-per-view platform, obviously they're doing it to make a few quid back from not selling tickets and so on. But it will come back, and I believe I have an exciting style, and I do a fan-friendly style. Like I said, I'm a massive boxing fan myself, and they're the type of fights I like to watch. I like to watch, boxing and moving is all good, and I know you have to do it sometimes, but I definitely prefer watching fights where there's blood and guts. So they're the fights that I'm going to try to be in.
Definitely more of a sort of throwback. You're someday that probably want to see your shorts and your opponent's shorts covered in claret.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's a sign of a good fight. That's a
It
sign of a
definitely
good
is.
fight. Yeah.
And the weight then you're going to campaign at the moment, you're obviously not obviously having to make a weight class because obviously you're just sort of building your craft. But what weight class will you look to campaign at?
So I'm going to be fighting a super featherweight. I'm just gradually getting down there now. At the moment, I've been competing just around lightweight. I think the last one was just under lightweight or just bang on lightweight. So
Mm-hmm.
they're just coming down gradually. I mean, look, I'm not fighting for titles just yet. So there's no point, killing yourself to make weight. Not that I would be killing myself at super featherweight, but I'll be campaigning at super featherweight and looking to move fast as well. I don't plan on hanging around and fighting too many journeymen as such. Hopefully, if I can have a busy year this year and kind of gain, like I said earlier about gaining an advantage and where others haven't been as busy. I hope to compete for titles next year. That would be
And in them
ideal.
weight classes you're sort of in as well, you're going to have there's going to be plenty of fights to be made. Whether it's in Ireland, whether it's in England. Super featherweight, lightweight. There's loads and loads of fighters there, so it's not like
Yeah.
you're going to run out of options. Easy for
No, yeah, and that's the thing for me. I'm quite a strong lad, so I would be happy to also compete at lightweight if the right opportunities come up. Obviously, I stay in the gym, I stay active, so I'm always near enough on weight, so weight isn't too much of an issue. But super feather will be my weight. But if you get off the right opportunity, you take it if it's at a higher weight, because there's not as much of a difference, we say, between super feather and lightweight. It's only 5 pounds in it. So
hmm
see where the opportunities come.
It definitely is. And so when are you, obviously two and oh, when are you hoping to get back out again?
I'm looking to get back out now, end of March, early April. Biden, everything's okay, and so on and so forth. So we're Conor, my manager, is Slater Consultancy. He's just ironing things out now at the moment. I think he's looking ahead now towards the summer and stuff. So yeah, it could be back out in Europe somewhere. Not 100% sure just yet where, but I hear there's talks of also the summer fans being back in the UK,
Yeah,
and
I think they're. I've sort of disregarded May. I think they're saying from the 17th of May, outdoor arenas and indoor arenas can take a certain percentage, but I think they're talking from 21st of June that things may return to
yeah,
normal. But it's like anything, you probably can't think of a
yeah,
gospel.
yeah. Look, yeah. So I mean, I would. It would be nice. It would be nice if I could get a fight. We say over in the UK or Ireland, and maybe get some friends and family too. That would be nice. But yeah, hopefully keep busy through the summer anyhow if we can, and looking to get out early April or end of March for the next fight for
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. And getting another one in then. And obviously, how's it been then, sort of adjusting as a pro? Obviously, not that you hadn't a lot of amateur experience, but have you sort of loved it more, the fact that you can express yourself fully? Obviously, been adapting to a pro style.
Yeah, it suits me. It always did suit me as a boxer in general. I always had that fighting style rather than boxing. The sweet science. I was a bit
Mm,
more, especially as a young lad. I had a lot of aggression. I had a lot of built up aggression. So I didn't know how to control it as well. So I had a very aggressive sort of style. Obviously now trying to hone that into being a bit more smart and a bit more economical and stuff. But the adapting really hasn't been too difficult, to be honest. The only thing I would say is you train more. You train harder.
mm,
The training in the gym. Stephen O'Rourke puts us through our paces. And we've got a bit of a busy gym. We've got great fighters there. So you look to your left and your right, you're on the bag, and lads are just slugging away at the bag. Hitting it as hard as it pushes you that bit more. So there's great sessions in the gym there when we're all pushing each other. You look to your left, if you feel that you're struggling, you see them, they look sharp. You're like, fuck, I got to be sharp as well. So
yeah.
that would be the only real thing I'd say. It's that bit harder, but the training, but adapting really for me it hasn't been hard. It hasn't been hard. I enjoy it. So
And sort of to put you on the spot, who have you been impressed with the most in the gym?
um oh, it's hard to say in different ways. They're all good fighters.
Mm,
Tiernan boxed with me there the other week. He's well known by especially the likes of yourself up north. He's from up north. Really, he's naturally very very gifted fighters. Again, we were saying there about different styles and different. Tiernan probably is one of the most naturally gifted boxers that I've seen. But then you've got Tony also in the gym who works extremely hard.
mm,
He's very, 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 he trains very hard, probably sometimes a bit too hard, but he's seriously dedicated lad. Then you've also got Ryan O'Rourke, Stephen's son. He's very, very knowledgeable, like he's been around someone who's so intelligent and so knowledgeable in the sport of boxing. You're getting tutored from a kid, like,
yeah.
from as soon as he could walk, he was getting taught about boxing. So, he's very advanced for his age as well. He got prospect of the year last year in
Yeah.
2020. And rightfully so. He was the busiest boxer in Ireland, I think, as well. So he's very good. You also got Victor Rabai, who's very slick and stuff. And
Slick Vic.
there's yeah, slick Vic. Yeah, he can be fairly slick at times in the ring. Yeah, he's brilliant as well. He's a little bit ahead of us. He's 10-0, so he's a little bit ahead. He's looking at bigger fights now and so on. But it's great to have the likes of him and around him and Tiernan and Ryan. They're lads I spar with regular, and it's great sparring.
Mm,
A lot of people have to go here and there and everywhere to get good sparring. I'm very fortunate. I turn up to the gym every day and I've got that on the doorstep. I don't have to go
yeah.
looking for it. So it's great in that sense.
It helps he's obviously all build together then, knowing he's can obviously at different stages of careers and things like that, but you don't have to go far to find a good sparring.
Yeah, exactly. And we're quite fortunate that we're all kind of different sizes and shapes and styles.
Hmm.
So, like Ryan's close to 6 foot. I think he's 6 foot. He's got kind of that longer, taller sort of reach. He's orthodox. Whereas Tiernan's that kind of you stay in front of you, but make you miss by an inch, kind of counter punching. Then you got Slick Vic who moves a bit better, and and then you've got me who's a southpaw. So there's a great range of
Yeah.
sparring in the gym, for different styles and fights, which is very good.
It definitely is. So obviously, been originally English yourself, and obviously now settled in Ireland. What would you sort of, what have you thought of boxing? Obviously during the pandemic and things, is it sort of getting more into it now that you're now a pro boxer yourself, or?
It's been hard to watch, to be honest. It's been a bit disheartening to watch. I mean, I watch boxing religiously. I have done even when I was boxing, not boxing, didn't matter. I just love, I love the sport. I don't watch many other sports because
Mhm.
for me, to sit down and watch something, it has to be exciting. It has to grip me. I like hurling. I like Gaelic. They're fast-paced sports, and boxing. It hasn't been the same. If you look back at the first shows the Matchroom did in the camp,
Yeah,
fight camp, the fight
fight
camp,
camp. Yeah,
you know, they were good because it was good to get boxing back, but it wasn't the same. They weren't the same fights. You know, when it gets to, we say, around 8, 9, and lads are just boxing and moving and they're winning, but if there's a crowd there shouting for the other lad, it'll give him that bit more. He might start going for it. I've found that we've been robbed of maybe a few more kind of 50-50 real good entertaining fights through the fact that there's been no fans to, like, you can see it in some people's performances. I think someone who's been who there the weekend was probably affected was Josh Warrington, not the weekend,
mm.
the weekend before.
Weekend before.
Josh Warrington, I mean, you look at his fights from before COVID, you look at his fans and that feeling that he must get from all them people shouting for him. The feeling that will give you, that the inspiration that it will give you in a fight to go to certain lengths that you might need to go to. He just wasn't able to do that the other week. Although the fight he was fighting was quite good and heavy-handed. Maybe had he had a crowd, it could have been different. That's
Yeah,
not to say it would have, but I definitely do think we will see more exciting fights when fans come back. I really
yeah.
do, and I can't wait because that's what boxing's about, excitement.
Exactly. It's fans that make the sport sometimes as well. Obviously, without the boxers there, but it's
100%,
it's fans that make the sport what it is, and having that
100%.
atmosphere of maybe you might not be feeling your best, and you might need somebody to give you that wee bit of a push. And the only one that's going to give you a push is the fans that sort of religiously support you
Yeah,
day in day out.
yeah. And look, it's a tough sport. You look at uh, who was the lad that fought the other day? Gavin Gwynn and
Sean
Sean
McComb.
McComb. You know, uh, he didn't have fans there. Maybe would he give it a bit more of a push had he had fans? It makes you react differently because you've got different emotions going through your body.
Yeah,
With all the fans screaming, shouting, people paying their hard-earned money to come watch you. It could give you that bit more of a push. Having your loved ones there and so on and so forth. So, I definitely do think we'll start to see a bit more excitement in boxing again when fans come back.
fingers
Which I'm
crossed, and
looking
I
forward to.
definitely echo that as well. So sort of finally before we let you go, sort of always like to ask everybody this because I guess in a brutal sport sometimes you have to set goals and aspirations where you want to be. Where would you like to
Yeah.
see yourself in 12 and 24 months within the sport?
With a title on my waist anyway, for sure, definitely. I think 2022, which is next year, I think I want to be looking, definitely at least by the summertime, looking at title fights, whether that will be an Irish domestic title or English. I'm willing, I'm happy to kind of go down really any route that suits me better, and see where the opportunities come. I would love to fight for an Irish title next year.
Hmm.
That would definitely be something I would love to do. I would love to pick up the Irish title first. I believe that if I step up through the levels correctly, I can go through domestic level onto European and so on and so forth. But the next 12 to 24 months, definitely, build it up over the next year. Now get the victories under the belt. Get the experience. Get the 6 rounders, 8 rounders, and maybe even a 10 rounder. And yeah, look for title fights. Definitely.
Fantastic. As I say, it's always good to have a
Yeah.
sort of goal and stuff there and where you want to be. Otherwise, what's the
Yeah.
point? If you can't see where you want to be in the sport, then it's hard to sort of keep yourself motivated.
Well, for me, it's like every fight is different. Every fight has different goals. But for me, the end goal is world titles. That's why I'm
Hmm.
in the sport. It's not for anything else. It's I mean, an Irish title would be great. European title, all those titles would be great. But at the end of the day, the ones that get you into it and the ones that get you excited are the world titles. That's what I believe I will get to eventually. I'm 24 years old. I turn 25 now in just over a month. I believe, the way I live my life, the way I train, the way I am, I have 10 good years in this sport. In 10 years, a lot can happen. You can gain a lot of experience. And I believe, I will get to the top eventually.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
if you don't have that belief, you're in the wrong sport.
And
Personally.
obviously in Irish boxing, I think probably someday it was sort of able to achieve your dreams in sort of a short time period was Luke Keeler. The start of
Yeah.
2018, he was fighting for a WBO European belt, won that, and obviously less than 2 years down the line, he was fighting in America for world title.
Boxing's a funny sport in the sense of, again, taking risks and chances. He took a good fight with that Arias, Luca, what was his name?
Luis Arias.
Lewis Arias, that's it. And off the back of a good win there, see, sometimes, we say these bigger names, like you look at the lightweights at the moment, sometimes they can't fight each other. They don't want to fight each other because they're
Yep.
scared to lose that in unification fights. So they look down the pecking order a little bit. And, you can get your chance. And we've seen plenty of upsets. I mean, look again, like I said about the Warrington fight with that Lara. So no one thought he was going to win. But look what he did. So it only takes, one night, one good night to topple a lad. So it's all about taking risks in the sport. And I think, it can happen very quick as well. I think we've seen that with many fighters where they've kind of feel like they're hitting a brick wall and they're not getting anywhere. And the next thing you know, out of nowhere, something comes off the back of a fight and, they can get their shot.
Definitely is. But John, listen, obviously, well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
Obviously, fingers crossed, you're going to have some fight news soon, and obviously, we'll look
hopefully,
forward to
yeah.
obviously broadcasting to everybody. We'll hopefully catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for having me on.